Okay, let me share my screen and then you can start. Okay, let me try again. Okay, so it keeps dropping. Just give me a second. I join once again to see if it will accept. I'll be joining shortly. Okay, so in case it doesn't, in case it stops sharing, let me know. Be sorry, I got dropped again. Let's see. Okay, so yesterday we learned about variables and data types. Sorry, and operators. Now with operators, I didn't go into comparison operators yet. So I'll give you some tutorial that you can go through, work on, and get your hands on it. Because they are quite useful, especially in the next section that we'll be going through, and that is on conditionals. So comparison operators are one of those concepts that you need as long as you are in your programming, your programming. So for today, we'll start first with data structures, and then we'll also look at conditionals, and then later on we'll look at functions. And then we have some activity that we'll do after that. That is just, it will involve a bit of HTML coding and just to make our websites look much better and more interactive. So we'll start with data structures. And basically, it's a format to organize and manage and store data in a way that allows efficient access and modifications. Now, I assume that most of us have at least interacted with the data structure before, because I understand that some of us have coded before. I think almost everyone has at least done some coding before. Data structures is one of those concepts that you need to understand. So you don't really need to go in depth and go into like all those really complicated data structures initially, until now you've understood how programming works, and you can continue, you can now advance into deeper into programming. So right now we are focusing on web development. So we'll just be focusing on the simple data structures, right? So and from that point, a data structure is a collection of values. So yesterday we talked about variables as a container for some certain data. So it could be a name, it could be a string, it could be a number. Those are just simple variables. We call them literals. But now a data structure is a collection of those literals together, right? So you can have a sequence of numbers, a sequence of strings, a sequence of even Boolean, like any of those data types that we covered yesterday. Boolean, um, numbers, strings, objects, which we'll look at in a few, or even an array in itself. Is this basically how you can put data together in one place, and then when you want to refer to that data, you just have the variable assigned to that data as your reference. Okay, so data structure, a format to organize, manage, and store data in a way that allows efficient access and modification. Okay, so on the second point, it's a collection of data values and the relationships among them, and the functions or operations that can be applied to that data. So that's a different definition from the first one. In this case, you'll actually later on, as you continue coding, probably in React, you'll notice that if in within that data structure, one of the elements can be a function, can have a function inside it. Okay, and then also in all this data that we are collecting, we can have a relationship between the set of data that we have. Right? So a relationship could be data that is particular to one person. So, for example, Faith. If you want to describe Faith in our course, we have her name. We can also get her national ID, her country of residence. That's Kenya, probably, and what else? Like her email address and contact details. So you can see there's a relationship between the set of data that we have. So remember, with a data structure, just any information that you want to relate to a particular person, an abstract, and it could be a person, a thing, like a chair. If you, it just depends on the type of application that you are creating. Okay, so the last statement there says it can be primitive or non-primitive. Now you'll notice that as you continue coding, there are certain data structures that will come up with yourself, especially when you start now doing those complex like coding examples, like your when you want to define a person, you want it to also have a function inside it. You also want to um, initialize a person. Like let me just understand as I say, a person can objects can be empty, like initially, and then we start adding data into that person object. So it can be that is a non-primitive type of data set or data structure. So you're the one coming up with that data structure, and then you add details to it. You can add as many variables as you want, and then you can give it some rules such that it has to be a certain number, it has to be within a particular range. It can have a function inside it that can manipulate that data. So that's the non-primitive type of data structure. So this is the one that you're the one, it's a leeway for the programmer to force your application to look a certain way. Okay, but the primitive ones are the basic ones that when you search online, like data structures, and the first thing that come up. So that's a good example in JavaScript is arrays and objects. Yeah, those are primitive in that they have a specific way of being declared, and they're simple to use. They are just once at some point you'll discover just at your fingertips. You create an array. As long as you understand the syntax, you can continue. Okay, so primitive, they are those default ones that can be familiar at some point, like arrays, and then non-primitive are the ones that you come up with. They are, for example, in Java, it's usually referred to like a class. Even in Python, I'm not sure about JavaScript by the way, but in Python, we define them using the keyword class. Okay, so it's like a class, and then you keep just referring to it. Okay, so as I've been mentioning, arrays are the most common data structure that will always come up with. Now, before I talk about arrays, let's set a foundation of why we are talking about data. Yesterday, in my example of the two websites that you're talking about, so let me open them once again. Not looks like I'm an ambassador for ShopZ, but bear with me. And then a simple website like the other website. So these two websites that you can see, okay, it is for, sorry, let me go to the home. Yeah. So this is our website for Digital Africa, and we've been using it as for referencing in terms of how it looks and all this. So it has data that is, it has some text that is written there when it was launched, then some text, and then you can click more to read about what it's all about and so on. Right now, if you look at this, I kept saying that it's a bit simple in that the most interactiveness that you can get is by clicking on the links. Okay, you can go back. You can go to the about us. You get to read what is going on there. You can check out programs. They're listed and so on. Right? But if I want to register, I probably have to look for a link somewhere that has been provided, or and then I can add some details and then save and then move on. Okay, but initially at a first glance, you can just see it's a simple website that provides information about the company. Now, if you compare with ShopZ2, ShopZ2 has products, it has links, it has colors and everything else. So at first glance, it looks similar to Digital Africa in that we have content, we have images, we have labels and so on. Now, the difference between these two is that the content that is in an online shop changes drastically. So maybe not so much in clothes, but think of it like in household items, like maybe if you go to the Carrefour application, just let's assume that these clothes are fast selling. Now we don't want to keep coming to our website to update the data. We just want to do it dynamically. So that is what an array helps us to do. It will contain data, or rather a data structure. A data structure will contain data that can be changed over time, can be removed, added, without us going into code every time to remove a particular section. Okay, so we think of when to use an array and when to use just the normal paragraphs that we've been doing. Is with a paragraph, if you want to put the text just in the paragraph element, you need you think of information that won't change over time. Okay, information that may not change in sorry that information that may not change over time. So for example, they had an event that, or is it like a program called Fuse or Fuse, and then there's information about it and then it just exists there. But with clothes, if this information, if this item is sold out, we want it not to be listed on the site. Okay, then when we restock it, we want to appear again. So that is that dynamic way of displaying data. So I'm sure like in 4 months, if we come back to this site, we'll find that the details have changed. Now, when you're creating the application, you don't want the customer or the client to keep coming back to you to update products. You'll also become tired. Yeah. So that's why we use data structures. Okay. And I've been talking about arrays, and with that in mind, an array is a collection of data stored in contiguous memory location. Okay. So each item can be accessed through an index. Right? So you have an array, you have data inside it, and then you can access each element with an index. Now, another word that I didn't use here is that in data in when you're using data structures, the data is mutable in that it can be removed, it can be uh, sorry, for most data structures, it can be removed, it can be moved to the end, like you list it probably at the end of the array, you can add new information. So it's mutable, especially when you're working with arrays. So it's really dynamic, it's very easy to use. Okay, so we access each element using an index. When I talk about element or item, actually it's the same thing. I'm using interchangeably. And then the one thing I want you to remember when it comes to data structures, specifically arrays, is that they always start at index 0. Okay? The first element, if you want to access the first element, to start with 0. So indexing is a concept that as long as you're working with data, you will always have to have it at the back of your mind. Indexing and accessing data in a data structure. Okay, so in an array of 4 elements, if you want to access the 4th element, it will be index 3. If you want to access the 3rd element, index 2, and so on. I hope that is clear. Now, when it comes to JavaScript compared to other programming languages, JavaScript arrays can store values of any type. So you can have a string, you can have a number, you can have a boolean, you can have another array inside it. So it's when you talk about the array, it can have any details within any data type within the array. Okay, so before I go to the last point, so of course I'll go back to my my VS Code, and then let's see. So we have data structures, and the first one is an array. Right. So let me put it there so that you can see what's going on. Okay, so how can we create this array? So you can say let R is usually a common variable name for an array, similar to num being a common variable name to a number. And you get to see it, it's quite popular. So right now I'm coming up with a simple variable name that you can use. Now to create an array, we use square brackets. An array usually in most programming languages, including JavaScript, the array is placed within square brackets. And then we can have our data inside. So let's start with just simple numbers: 23, 45, 45 again, 32, 28, and so on. Okay. Then another array, array 2 equals to with strings. And with strings, you always put any, remember yesterday we said strings, you always have to put it in quotes. So a string here, we can have, let's say, fruits, apple, orange, banana, this watermelon. Okay, so these are the these are two ways, these are two examples of arrays. The first one has numbers. With numbers, as you can see, and as similar to how we did yesterday, numbers we don't put quotes, but with strings we put whatever is inside a string in quotes. Okay, so the syntax for an array is square brackets, then all the data is placed inside. Now, each set of data has to be, each element or item has to be separated by a comma. In an array, we separate each item with a comma. Okay? So it depending whether you have a string, whether you have a number, whether you have true, false. So we prevent then let's do boolean array. Like that, yeah. So we can also have this. Now it's really rare to create some. Oh yeah, actually it's used later when you do some coding exercises. But yes, you can also have the Boolean array like that. Now, Boolean is you use the keyword true or false. As I mentioned, we'll cover Boolean quite detailed when we're working with conditionals. But yeah, so with Boolean data type in JavaScript, is just everything is small caps and it's a keyword. So we can't use true as a variable. Now, as you can see, it's even highlighted in blue so that you know it's a keyword. So we have true, we can have false if it's a falsy statement. If it's a truthy statement, we have true there. So these are the different ways, the basic ways of writing an array. Now we've also said that in JavaScript you can have arrays. Array 4 can be a combination. So this time round, let me, instead of calling it array 4, let me call it a student. A student can have different information. So for example, we have their student ID, right? We can have their name. We can have their address. And maybe their nationality. We can also have their phone number. So phone numbers, you can decide to put it in string. Let's just do that as an example. Like that, right? So this, in this case, my array has a mix of data types. We have a number and then strings. Now the first string is just simple text. The second string is a mix of text and numbers, so it's alphanumeric. The last string is digits, but placed in a string format. Okay, so as you can see, it can take any type of data in any format, right? So back to our slide here. I hope you've understood how we'll create, we can work with arrays. Okay, so the last statement I want us to do, and then we can do some practical, is a multidimensional array. An array can have another array inside. Okay, it is very common, especially when you have different sets of data. Right? So a good example is, let students, when you have multiple students. So let me have their, let's say their names and ID. Okay, that, and then okay, so you can have this. It's a nested array or a multidimensional array. As you mentioned, it can have any type of data within, including different types of data sets or similar arrays, a nested array. Now, in this case, it's a good practice. Later on, we'll learn about objects, but you'll notice that it's better to have a nested array as an object rather than a multidimensional array. It's easier to work with. But yeah, anyway, these are the different types of arrays. So what I want you to do, we can do now an exercise, a good exercise. First, I want you to come up with these three arrays. I'll give you some time to type on your side. Just come up with any so that as you type, you understand when to use a comma and when to use where to put commas, where to put square brackets. Then later on, we can print them on our screen. So take some time to have this code on your side. I'll use code share later. No, most of us might prefer that because it's quicker, but I want us to learn. At least typing is better because you can know how to fix an error. So I'll give you about 2 minutes to type this array. And then let me just check in to see if there's any concern. You can chat and let me know. Right. Sorry, just 1 second. Once you're done, kindly type on the chat thumbs up so that I know you have progressed well. Not yet. Okay, 1 more minute. Okay. Thumbs up if you're done. Thumbs down if you're not. Thank you, Faith. Ashley, Nigel. Sorry, I got dropped. Thank you. All right, perfect. So, next step, we can now try and display them on our web page. So just do a simple paragraph and then call each of the variables. So right now we really don't have like any ID assigned to it. So we can have an ID equals to. So basically we're repeating what we did yesterday. I'm hoping this section will be faster. Okay, so I'll type the first one and then I copy paste the rest. You can do the same. 2, array 3, then student, then students. Right. So have the 5 paragraphs. Have the 5 paragraphs, and then afterwards we can now get display them on our using get element by ID. So I'll copy up to this point. Don't need to type it all that again because I believe you remember. Okay. So with this in mind, so let me repeat again. We put the paragraphs at the top. So you have array 1, array 2, array 3, students. Have those paragraphs. This is an HTML element. And then inside the, after the the declarations, the variables that we've just created, use DOM to access or rather to print those variables on your screen. Now, once you're done, we'll just go around quickly to see how we are faring. So I'll ask you guys to share because you're 3. So I believe you can just quickly share your screens just to see your activity or your progress, where you're stuck. If you have an error, we can solve it. Yes. So I forgot to put commas, but that's okay. Now, once you're done, refresh on your screen to see if there are any changes or how it looks like. right? So you should have something similar to what I have. So starting with this line, 23, 45, 45, 32, 78, and then the rest. Okay, so Faith, Ashley, since you're just here with us, maybe you can share your screen so that you can see how you're faring. We'll go first. Faith, would you like to go first?
I can go first.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Oh, I can't share the screen. There's
Okay,
a yeah, it's not allowed.
let me see. Lola, let me alert Lola to give us right. All right, try now. Should be working.
Okay, yeah, it's allowed.
Right, that looks great. Um, if you put it on your screen on your browser, how does it look like?
Um,
That's great. That's good. Thank you. Faith, would you like to go next? You can just share your browser.
Okay.
Right. That is actually that's good. Um, do you have the one that has um the multiple array, or it's okay? Did you have
No.
a challenge with that?
Yeah, I did. I don't know why it hasn't
Okay.
displayed. Okay, let me check it out.
All right. It's okay. We can stop. We'll sort it out later because you're going to. We want to do the second one, so hopefully it will help you out. Right. You can stop sharing. All right. So back to my slides. Let me share them. So that was arrays. I've taken quite some time on arrays because it's one of those foundational concepts that you need to remember. And then you also have objects. Objects are similar to arrays, but they have a key value pair. So we have this is a good example of how this is like the syntax. Where we have variable, or rather it's a constant actually, and then you have the values. So the key is the ID, and the value is the whatever is number, or an or computer science. Okay, so this is the key value pair that you're talking about. Now, we've already said that we can access elements using indexing. So ideally, if I go back to my code and you see each of the items we have within our array, we can access them using an index where this is index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, index 4, like that. And the same for the rest. But sometimes we want to have a specific index in quotes to access each element. Right? So for example, when it comes to student, at first glance, I may not understand what 2681 means. It as I was doing the example, I was saying this is our student ID. But if someone else gets this if someone else gets access to our data, they may not really understand exactly what 2681 means. So in this case, it's better to use a key value pair where the key will identify what type of data it is, and then the value is basically the container of the data. So in this case, ID equals to 1, we can also put it as 2681, like that. So it's easier to read. Someone can understand exactly at first glance what is going on. So key value pairs are very common, especially when it comes to API. As we talked yesterday, we said API is now how you're pulling data from another application or another server somewhere, some data store somewhere. You'll notice that key value pairs are more commonly used compared to arrays. However, how we execute them are just quite similar. If I want to access the indexing still works in that if I will still want to access each element, I will still use index 0. Okay. So where I can get both the key and the value. So iterating through the process still works. So when it comes to objects, we use curly braces to declare the object. And then, so we have the key, then a colon, and then the value, as you can see. And then each element, so this is one element. Name and earn is another element, course and computer science is another element. Similarly to arrays, we separate each element with a comma. Okay, so as you, we'll use objects a lot when we get to React, so I won't really ask us to focus on it. But Faith, in case you're having a challenge with the nested array, you can try using an object. It will still work the same way. Right, so the other thing we need to understand is the key has to be unique. Each key has to be unique, okay, within its own set of data. Sorry, within its own, yeah, within its own set. So we have ID, we have name, we have course. We can't have another ID appearing again, like ID, let's say for national ID, 35, 37, like that. Right? So this is the student ID and this is the national ID. They're different values, but if we need to separate, to rather to differentiate them, it's better to give it the full name, national ID, or, and this side is student ID, so that it makes more sense. So it means that each key is unique on its own. Okay. So however, a question that usually comes up when I go through this section is, if we have many students and we have many student ID, their name, their course, their whatever, how can we have unique IDs? We'll use the multidimensional array as we've just seen. So we'll have it as inside each set will have its own inside its own curly braces. So we can have an array of objects, right? Um, let me use this in VS Code because that's easier than coding on PowerPoint. Let me clean it up first. Right. This is a comma. Okay, so if we have multiple students, instead of having it this way, we are going to modify this a bit. We convert it into an array of objects. Then after each object, we have a second set of data. So I can repeat this, that, and then now change the values. I don't know, like this some simple, just bear with me in how I'm writing them. So as you can see, the IDs still remain the same, or the key parts still remain the same, the values change, but we have each set of objects. Each object has its own data. So that's how you can have multiple data for each student, right? So we'll use this a lot also in React. We'll have arrays and multidimensional arrays used as objects. Okay, so instead of using it initially the way we did at the top here. Okay, any question on objects or arrays? Any questions so far? Concern? I move to the next. Okay. So I'm assuming we are all okay, but kindly you can always chat a question or a clarification if we need. So next we'll be moving to conditionals. There's one other concept I have not added here, but we'll see. Anyway, give me 1 second. I just fix my charger and then we can continue. Just one. Right. So thank you for that. Now we have conditionals. Conditionals are work hand in hand with two other concepts that I have skipped, so I've been skipping so far. Anyway, but what exactly are they? They are code structures used to test if an expression returns true or not. So a truthy or a falsy statement or expression. They control the behavior and determine whether or not pieces of code can run. So if this expression, if the condition is met, we have some conditions. We want them, if they are met, we want to do A. Or if they're not met, we have another section called else. Okay, so a condition, there are actually many other conditionals that you can, not so many, maybe 3 or 4, but the most common one is the if else statement. So if if the if else statements executes if a specified condition is true. If the condition is falsy, another statement will be executed, right? So it's kind of optional. Okay? The else statement is optional. You don't have to always put it, but you'll notice that most of the time it's better to catch those errors that might come up in case the condition is not met. Okay, so how can we achieve this? So back to my code. I have an error somewhere. I have an extra curly brace. Okay. So we have conditionals. Okay. So we want to create an if-else statement. Okay. So let's think of a scenario. Right. We are using talent for startups as no, that might be a bit tricky. Let's think of what? Yes, let's think of day. It's a very common coding assignment, a coding exercise. Let's think of a day. We have morning, we have midday, we have afternoon, and then we have evening, or no, and night, right? So let me write them down. We have morning, midday, afternoon, evening, and night, right? So morning, let's assume it starts from 5 a.m. It sounds like a morning. So 5 to 10. Okay. And then, so it's a bit, I'm just using it on a low level way. Don't mind me. So I'm not considering the minutes or the seconds. So just assume we are talking about the hour only. So if the hour is at 11 or starts with 11 all the way to midday, let's say stops at 1. Then afternoon starts at 2 to like 4. And then evening starts at 5 to about 8 p.m. And then night starts at 9 all the way to 4 a.m. Okay, so we have all these sections. Okay, but now let's use 24 hours so that this they don't clash. It's 14 to 16 to 17 to 20 and 21 to, let's just end at midnight for now because we have so many other factors to consider. So we'll really skip 1 to 4 for now. Okay. Anyway, so these are our simple conditions for a day. We have morning, we have midday, we have afternoon, evening, and night, and our night ends at midnight. So between 1 and 4 is a bit hidden. Or we can actually add it. new day. Let me just say new day becomes 1, 2, 4. Right. So these are our expressions. Now we want to see if the current hour falls in any of these sections. How many are there? There are about 6. Okay. So how we can achieve conditionals is using the if-else statement. So if our hour is within 5 and 10, what do? It's good morning. Midday, it's I think it's still good afternoon. No, actually, instead of that, you can say if it's between 5 and 10, you can say it's still morning, it's midday, it's afternoon, it's evening, or just tell the user what is the current section of the day. Okay, so that's what I want us to try and achieve. So if you are already familiar with conditionals, go ahead and try by yourself to achieve this statement. But if not, you can follow my examples. So we have conditions. The next thing that I want us to talk about before we start coding is true and false. Now we have already introduced it initially, Boolean statements. Now, when it comes to conditionals, it checks if the statement is true or false. If it's true, we execute that. If it's false, we see if there's another condition. If there's no other condition, it will just ignore. Okay. And although it's good practice to always have a condition to meet the opposite, right? So mostly if and else always go hand in hand. Okay. So that's the first thing. The other thing that we skipped yesterday were comparison operators. As you can see, as I type there, comparison operators, they work similarly to the normal operators that we had covered yesterday, multiplication, division, and all these others. Okay, but there are a few that we need to work with. So we have the double equals. So that is it just compares directly. And then we have the if it's not equal to that, and then you can check an or, an and, it's another one I'm blanking out. But these are operators that help us to check to meet if the condition is true. Okay, so or and it's like to combine two conditions, and then equals to anything that has an equals to is just to compare now the two conditions, right? So in this case, let's try and learn and use it practically. Let's start with the first one for morning. So the syntax for a condition is if else, as I've just been saying. If that, we put the condition in a bracket, we put the statement to be executed here, to be executed. Now, apologies if I'm rushing too fast. I'm also trying to manage on time. And then we have another condition. Executed if the above fails, right? If the above condition. Right, so that is the if else statement that I'm talking about. So we need our condition here. You can see that I already have an error because it's blank. If the condition is true, we have our statement. Else gives us the statement to be executed if the condition fails. So sometimes it's optional, as you had mentioned. You can always have it just like that, but sorry. but it's good to always have it. It's like a catch. Now, here, my first condition is I want to check if the current time is morning. So we need to have the current hour. So that will become a variable that will add the top here. Current hour equals to, let's say right now it's 10. Okay. So my current hour, I want to see at what point does it fit. So current hour equals to 10. So let's see if current hour oh yes, I've remembered the other comparison statements. So if the current hour equals to 5, let me just go step by step. What do we say? We can have another variable. Give me a second. Message is an empty string. You can initialize at the top there, and then you say message equals to it's morning, right? So this is a simple if statement. We have 5, 6, all these hours. These are usually 24 hours anyway. So we have our first condition. If the current hour equals to 5, what is our message? It's morning. Okay. Else, messages, it's not. It's not morning. All right. So that is our first execution. Now, if we need to achieve this, of course, I'll have to do another paragraph. The ID equals to hour. Okay. So what exactly am I doing? I want to display the values on my screen. Okay, so I'll use the DOM once again to display it and change it down here. Right. Okay, so no message. So if I do this and do check on our browser, what is going on? Okay. So the current hour, that was a simple paragraph, you can ignore that. What we're focusing on is the last one. It's not morning. Our condition is if the current hour is 5, it's morning. If it's not 5, it's not morning. But there's an issue. Of course, it's an error, right? An error in that right now it's 10 and it's still morning, but you're not executing it. Okay, so let me see in case we are familiar with that. How can we achieve how can we fit that such that it's between 5 and 10 for it to display morning? Anyone would like to try? If the current hour is 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, and we want to display its morning, how can we achieve that? Anyone want to try? Faith, Ash.
We can.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Nigel.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to say we can use the comparison operator
Which one?
if 5 is greater than or equals to 10.
Okay. If 5 or if hour.
Pardon?
If 5 is greater than or equal to, or if hour is greater than or equal to, which one is that?
Oh, I mean the current hour.
Yeah. Okay. Ashley, what was your answer?
I think it was the same, but I was gonna use less than.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's less than, right? So that's sorry about that. There we go. So current hour. We need to use the comparison operators, the ones that I skipped. So let me add them here. We have less than, we have greater than. We can combine them, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Okay. So with this in mind, we need to check. If we only do less than 10, it will also pick our new day. And if we only do greater than 5, it will pick all the others, right? So it will only ignore new day. So we need to put our comparison to check for both. And in this case, we can use the keyword and. There's also another shortcut later on that you can check. But let's use this. So we have greater than or equals to 5 and, is it and? Or is it? I'm blanking on which programming language. Ah, right. So if current hour is greater than or equals to 5, and so this is the ampersand for, it represents and, yeah, in JavaScript. And current hour is less than or equals to 10. Let's see if that will work. Right. So now it's morning. Our current hour is 10. Okay. So next we need to check. We always need to check now for the others. So in this, with this statement that we have, line number 66, we are covering 3 concepts: conditions, comparison operators, and Boolean, true or false. So the condition, our current hour, we are comparing, does it fit between 5 and 10? If it does, we execute a statement. So that is a true or false statement. If you see, with these 3 concepts, anytime you're doing conditions, you'll be covering the 3 concepts: comparison operators, conditions, check if conditions are met, and the true or false statement. So it gives a true or false output. And so within the if, the curly braces, we now put the statement that needs to be executed. Okay, so you'll notice that as you continue coding, when we want to cover one concept, we need another concept and another concept to combine them together. Okay, so as we continue learning, we'll be able to cover them. Hopefully, we'll cover most of it. There's one last one that I have skipped. I don't know if we have time for it today, but I'll make sure we cover it. Right. So on your with our basic conditions on line number 59, we have 6 sections of a day. How can we achieve that with this statement? So such that if currently it's 12 p.m., I want it to say midday. If it's afternoon, I want to say it's afternoon. Who can tell me how we can achieve that? How can we add all the other statements? Right, let me repeat the question again. So in line number 59, we have 6 sections: morning, midday, afternoon, evening, night, and a new day. Okay. I want it such that when the current hour fits any of these, so let's say right now it was in the evening at 7 p.m. It will, I want the message to read it's evening. How can I achieve that using this? Anyone would like to try?
You you'll use the else statements, the else statement, yeah.
An else statement.
Else,
Someone else?
yeah.
Okay. Someone else like to try? Not really. So yes, you still use the else statement, but you have already used it here. Okay. So if you just use else, it will give us it's not morning, or we can say it's midday. But then the condition for afternoon is not met. Now, if I have several conditions, as you can see, we use an else if. The actual statement is called else if. Okay? So the if else statement, you can have one condition and then its opposite, the false version, or you can have multiple conditions that are met. And if none of them fail, now just the simple plain else statement will help us, will capture that error. So what I'm going to do here, after just before the else statement, I'll add an else if, like that. Okay, and then I repeat conditions and like that. So we have 6 of them. So let me repeat them 6 times. Copy this. 1, it's actually 5 times. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So this will be our condition for morning, our condition for midday, afternoon, evening, night, and it's a new day, right? So inside the if, we'll repeat a similar condition, but now the values will change. Okay, so put that there. But now for midday, it's 11 to 13, right? And then here for afternoon, it's 14 to 16. So that's 4 p.m. And then for evening, it's 17 all the way to, I think it was 20. And then for night, 21, 24. And then for one to 4, that becomes a new day. Okay, so the message is similar. Hope you can track what I'm doing. Right. So it's for midday we'll put our mid messages. Forgetting to add that. And then after noon, so night, and lastly, it's a new day. Right. So those are our conditions that you're meeting. We have 6 sections of the day. We want the message to display morning, midday, afternoon, evening. At night, and it's a new day. So we're assuming between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. That's there's not really much greetings there. So it's just assuming it's a new day. So those are our 6 statements. Now, what if the input comes as 28? Okay, it is not captured in any of the 24 hours that we have catered for. So we'll have our message, in case none of these conditions are met, we still have our last else statement. So we can say it's not a true hour. This is a simple message that you might think of, right? So you can see our code is becoming richer and more lines of code, more conditions need to be met, and so on. So try this on your side. I hope you are trying it also. Um, we're trying to achieve all this so that um, we are all on the same plan. So if I refresh my browser, there should be not much change because my current hour is still set at 10. So let me change it to 18. So that's 6 p.m. My message will be it's evening. Okay, you can just keep once, if in case you finish, you can just play around with it to see which condition is met, which one is not met. So let me just put a random number that is not an hour number, and my message will be it's not a true hour. Okay, so 189, 5,000 and something. So that's an edge case scenario in case the input is wrong hour. We need to have that the statement that will be executed when that condition fails. Okay, so it becomes it's not a true hour. Okay, give you a minute to absorb that, finish in case you're still working on it, and then you can move on to the next concept. All right, thumbs up if you're okay, or if you have a question. Thank you, Ashley. Nigel, Faith. Okay. Nigel, are you okay? We don't want to leave you behind. All right, that's great. So our next um, concept. Now this is where programming becomes quite interesting when you start working with functions. So we'll introduce basic functions for now until we come up with the concept. When we move back to our website, that's when we can come back and create complex functions afterwards. But what are they exactly? Now, they are a way of packaging functionality that you wish to reuse. Okay? So it's possible to define code as a function that executes when you call that name. So we always, well, of course, functions are given a name, and then if you want to execute it, you call that function name anywhere within your code. So it can be called within the HTML section. So there's a way of like combining HTML and JavaScript within, or you can print on the console. Console is another thing that we are to cover today, another practice, right? But we are able to display it. Okay, um, so it's a good way of it's a good alternative to avoid repeatedly writing the same code. Okay, so you might have seen them before, probably, or not, when you have been reading online, so it could be familiar. Now there are two types of functions. There are primitive functions, the functions that are inbuilt, that come packaged together with JavaScript, and then there are the functions that you come up with yourself. Okay, so the non-primitive ones. So if you remember a data structure, can create a structure that fits your needs, or you can use the default ones. So the same thing with functions. So some functions are also actually referred to as methods because they have a specific function to activity or thing that needs to be executed that relates to a particular variable. It could be a data structure or just a simple variable, right? An object. So I will get to see the difference between the two. But the inbuilt functions are something similar to like document.query selector, an alert, there's a console.log, something like that, something similar to that code. So let's go back to VS Code. A simple example of a function is this. We have document, and then we have get element by ID. This is my function. Okay? The get element by ID is my function. The document is my object. And we remember we said the document is the same as the web page. The white, this white page. This is my document. Now within this document, we have JavaScript has provided us some default functions that you can use. A good example is to get each HTML element with an ID. Okay, and then within that function, it can have another function. So where we get the inner HTML for that element. Okay, so those are the default, the primitive functions that come packaged already with JavaScript. But then we also have those that you will create it yourself. So a good example is when we're creating these conditions. These conditions are best placed within a function, and then we'll call that function and refer to it within our HTML. Okay, so rather than having it as a floating set of code, we will find that most of the when you're trying to force or design application and there's some activity like a condition, an expression that needs to be converted, we put them inside functions, and then those functions are now called within the HTML section. Right, so back to my back to my slide. Right, so as just mentioned, query selector and alert are built in onto the browser. They come together with JavaScript. Now, how can you identify the built-in type or even just any function? If you think something that looks like a variable name and then it's followed by parentheses, most likely it's a function. That's like the syntax of how we define or call a function. And the other comment that we need to remember, let me just actually separate it, it takes arguments. Now, arguments are like the variables that we covered yesterday. These variables that we are creating, like current, hour, number, array. It takes arguments, that is data that needs to be worked on. Now, why do we need functions? Functions help us to modify how data is going to be displayed. How a phone number needs to be displayed in a way that we identify that's a phone number and that's not any random value. How a date can be formatted into, let's say, month, day, year, or the full text, like an actual full text April instead of writing the number 4, like that. So functions help us to modify data, and that is why when we pass those arguments, those variables into the function, we can modify it so that by the time it's being displayed on HTML, it's displayed the way we'd like it to look like, right? So arguments will always be placed inside the parentheses, inside the brackets. And then if they are multiple, we separate them with commas. Okay, so a good example with alert. Alert is already an inbuilt function. What it does, it displays text on the screen. Okay, so it needs some argument inside it on the message that you want to display on the screen. So that pop-up box will have will have the an argument. Most of the time it's usually a string, just like a simple message, or it can even be the variable that you want to display. Okay. Sorry, this is an activity. Bear with me on that. So oh, actually needs to be, it's not duplicated it. So let's try and work with functions in this scenario. So we will, I like us to do just a simple function, but how we will achieve them is we're going to create a whole new HTML page where we will have some functions in it and so on. So we'll go in depth at that point. So right now, let's do a simple function that can give us an idea of what I'm talking about. Right. So here we can declare a function later. like that. That is the syntax for declaring a function. So we have the keyword function in front of it. Then we have calculator. That's like a variable name. It's a word that you come up with. That's what I'm trying to say. And then we always place brackets after it, whether we have variables being passed or not. And then we put any statement to be executed within the curly braces. This is the default, basic, simple syntax of a function. So in this case, let's think about this, what you want to achieve. We want to do a simple calculator. Okay? A simple calculator, we have the three operations. Sorry, let's work with the four basic operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Right? So we can achieve that here, in that we have different options. We can also combine it to the if-else statement that we have just created. So let's start with a simple calculation. Let's have our variables. We had number at the top here. Let's use x and y equals to 45. Let's y equals to 90. Okay, let's try simple addition. So it's just the same as we did yesterday. Nothing new. X add equals to x plus y. Right? So simple calculation. Simple calculation. So I'll do 4 of them like that. Here we have subtraction. So when we change it to a minus, multiplication, division. Now remember, the operator for multiplication is that, and this is like that. Okay, so we need to change the simple variables. Actually need let. And then we have let multiplication multiply. Let this is subtract. Let's multiply. Divide. Like that. All right, simple calculator, simple sequence of code. We have two variables, we have the different operations we need to do it. Now let's make it more usable, easier to work with. So I believe, I'm hoping that at this point you already understand what I'm doing. I'm just doing variables and then the simple operators. So to make this a bit rich and usable in a way where if we're given other values outside, the user is working and they want to add different data, what they can do, we can pass these variables as arguments to our function. Okay? So my argument will become x and y, right? And then I'll remove this from inside the function. So they'll come from another, let's say we have done here. Let's say we have done some HTML form, and then the users are adding data, and we are able to get the values. We haven't done that yet. It's actually supposed to be our next exercise. Anyway, so here we have our calculator. We pass the arguments x and y, and then at this point we can just use x and y however we would like, right? So we have add is equals to this, subtract is that, multiply is that, divide is that. Okay. So hopefully you're with me up to this point. Now I want us to convert this into simple if-else statement. So instead of doing all the 4 calculations at once, the user normally they want an addition or a subtraction or a multiplication. Not if they have both at the same time, of course that's a complicated calculator and so on. But at this point we're just doing a simple calculation. We are assuming the person just wants any of the 4 operations. So what we'll do, we can let our function accept the variable, the numbers, the 2 numbers that we need to work on, and the operator like that. Okay, so the operator becomes an option rather than writing the entire code equals to, let's say, multiplication. Oh, sorry. So like that. Okay. When we pass the operator, our calculator becomes simple to work with. So what we will do, we will convert this into if else statement. So if operator, that's our condition, is equals to an addition, we execute it. Oh, mixing up languages. Like that. If the operator is an addition, we do an addition activity. The same with a subtraction, a multiplication, a divide. And then we have our last else statement that will give us an output in case none of the conditions are met. So that's what we'll do now. Else if, that is our condition. So we have 3 of these. That, and then a last else statement. The last condition. So we have the operator. If operator is that, we do this. So that is the addition. This is a subtraction. The division, like that. Okay. So in with this in mind, I'd like us to have our result. Our result is going to be something so let's say results of let's result. So we have initialized another variable that we'll call our result. So let's do the calculation. So we'll say result equals to x plus y. So they're just the simple calculations we've just been doing. X plus y, or x minus y x divided by y. Else result is like that. Right. So instead of doing it how I had done initially, we can now delete this because we don't need it anymore. This becomes a simple calculator. Our calculator will have two variables and the operator. We pass them into our function, and then we use the if-else statement to check what is the operator and how we can achieve the value. Now, usually we have our results here. What do we need to do a return statement. Return result. Okay, so anytime we will call our function calculator, we will do the whatever we have passed to it, x, y, and the operator. We do our calculations, we check whichever has been passed, and we do it, and then we return the results, right? So by default, in case any of the operator doesn't work or the numbers are funny, it's a letter that was passed, we will have our catch statement, like our default statement, which is result is not a number. None is just means not a number. It's a keyword. It's available. I think it's almost all programming languages. So sometimes it's null, sometimes it's none. Anyway, so that's the basic syntax of a function. Now, if you need to call it, that's why we'll just use calculator. Like that. And that's how you're able to run your so I wish I had another IDE that has a console on, and it's fine. Simple function, simple calculator at that point. So hopefully you're with me, and then we can try and run it on our browser. Let me stop there. You can type that, have it on your side. I have only one last, actually two things. So you bear with me. I'll take 10 more minutes of your time. Okay, so as I mentioned, with functions, we will I'd like us to work on it in a different way. How we'll achieve it in our website. So we will go back to later on, not now, because our class is over. We will go back to our website and now try and combine JavaScript and HTML as we've been doing so far, and then add some of those some functions in it, and then they'll have some conditions and the rest. Now, the one thing I want to just mention is debugging. Now with debugging, actually, let me hear from you. How do you normally debug if you want to, like, as you're coding, we need to test if it's working. Let me get to hear for those who actually Nigel said he works with Vue.js. How do you normally debug your code, your JavaScript code?
I think console.log at some point,
Okay.
and the debugger VS Code can try that as well.
Okay, that is good. Now on your browser, how do you access your
I
code?
inspect. You can just inspect and then
Okay, so there are normally the three ways. The default one, or rather the one I'm so used to, is on the browser and is mentioned inspect. So normally we right click. Now it depends on the browser you're using. Okay, so right now I'm using Chrome. It usually has this option, inspect. Okay, I think for others you'll see something like developer tools, and then there's an option for inspect after it. Just depending on your browser, the word might be different, but normally what we say when you work with a web application, we just inspect to see everything that is working. Then I click on inspect, a window will pop up, right? And we'll get to see our entire document. So we have our body, we have all these others. Okay. Now we remember we covered all this with when we're working with CSS. Actually, I just remember that going through this part. The part I want to show you today is this section for the console tab normally shows all errors relating to JavaScript. If there's an error that, for example, this my message is at 189, and then this is the one that will be executed. Can do that. Okay, so that doesn't give me an error. Let me try and replicate an error. Yes, that's an error I wanted to show. Now it's an error relating to JavaScript in that we can easily tell that this ID does not exist in my HTML section because it's actually called our. This is the one I'm talking about, right? So when you have a JavaScript error, the console section will show you what is going on. Nigel has also mentioned you can use console.log. That is a way of debugging or showing output for any of the for any error that might appear. Okay, so if you use console dot not error, any statement that you like to show, but you don't want to display it on the HTML section. So that's another option. And the last one is using the debugger on VS Code. So it's usually like a bug. This one here, right? So right now I've not really done any running or any I don't want to do it because I know some things might break that I had added before, but you can try it out as we continue coding. Now as we progressively move to JavaScript, this will be your best friend. Is the debugger on VS Code, and right clicking on your browser, go to the console tab, and then you'll see any error that might appear. So later on in the future, when we get to APIs, I'll get to show you the network section. But yeah, we'll see what's going on there. Anyway, so I'm actually jumping ahead. But for the current state we are in, always use the console tab in case you're stuck, something is not being displayed. Most likely you'll find your error appearing on this tab. Okay, last question to you guys. Do we have GitHub accounts?
yeah.
Yeah, Ashley, Faith?
Yes.
Yeah.
You do. All right, perfect. So what you will do, our time was really short. We were supposed to do something, with the, as I mentioned, how we were supposed to finish our function class. So what I'll do, I'll share with you some guide, actually, and then what you will do, you will upload your project, this site, the one that we did, home, the talent for startups project, onto GitHub. Just wait, are we familiar on how to use it, like push pull,
I
posting a new
already
rep?
Yeah.
All right, you already did it, yeah?
I already uploaded it.
Faith?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the nini, with how to use it.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. You uploaded it?
Not yet. I haven't
Not yet.
uploaded it.
Okay. So you can upload it. If you get stuck, let me know. But that is perfect since you've already done that. So what I'll do, we let me just try and open. Um, beautiful. So on our website, I'd like us to do a sign up page. Okay. So try and do it on your own if you can, but don't worry, I'll give you the guide. I'll give you the guide, and then maybe by Monday, I'll give you the full code. So over the weekend, I want you to try and create a sign up page. So it will have like 3 fields. So where the users can sign up onto our website. So we'll have the like a name, contact details, then their address. Like you can also have a list of countries and so on. So I'd like us to create. So of course you'll create a whole new file. You create a new link, and then remember to put it in each one of them. And then on that link, you create a sign up page on that, or rather on that document, create a sign up page that will have all this information. So it will, this time around, it's a HTML form. So it will have some in text fields, to definitely have a button, and then try and add some divs inside and everything else. But on Monday, I'll now share the actual code to you guys. I'll share it via WhatsApp. So then you can now try and complete it. It will also contain some JavaScript functions to maybe check on the phone number is actually working the way it's supposed to work. I think also passwords, all the rest. Okay. So on Monday to Monday and Tuesday, I'd like you now to add the JavaScript side of things. Okay? So for now till Monday, you'll just be working with HTML. If you'd like to continue all the way to JavaScript, that's fine. But yeah, I'll share the full page that will have both the HTML, CSS, and the JavaScript that and the functions that I want us to achieve. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So Nigel, I'll ask Lola to add you. Do we
And
have you? I'm sure we have you. Yeah.
I wanted to go through something with you if you have a minute after the meeting. That is.
Okay. All right. That's fine. It's okay. Okay. So yeah, we that's fine. So next week's class, you're supposed to start with React, but we will go through first the projects. Now you'll present your project. I don't need, of course, you'll share the GitHub, and then I'll see how to assist you throughout the week. Then the first class, On Wednesday, the first hour, we'll go through the project, get to see if there's anything that we need to capture on the basics, as well as loops. Loops is another concept that we have not covered. I don't want to go to React before we've covered loops yet. So that's the plan for next week. Now, also in the meantime, I hope you can see my screen. I'll share this guide on JavaScript. So the requirements, the code setup, something that I'm sure right now it's a bit repetitive. You're already familiar with that. So there's this specific tutorial that I'd like you to go through. It's not sponsored by Strathmore, by the way, or the program. It's just the one that a tutorial that I found quite useful. It shows you or rather it will teach you all the other concepts that we have skipped, because you already understand JavaScript is so wide, it's so deep, we don't have enough time to go through all this. So like for example, section 2, we have covered most of the parts: syntax, variables, data types, numbers. We haven't covered numbers in depth. We've covered booleans just on the surface, string as well, object and array. Okay, so section 2 is where I'd like you to go deep into it, and try and work on that. Section 3 as well should just give you some fundamentals. We also covered section 4, control flow, and functions. Okay, how you can run it. I think it also has its own IDE, like an inbuilt IDE. No, it doesn't. This one doesn't have. Okay, it's fine. You can try on your computer the code. So the loop that I'll be talking about is this for in loop. Right? This is the document that I will, this is the section that we have not really covered that I'd like us to go through. So if you want to jump ahead, you can go ahead and do that if you have enough time. But yeah, go through the site. It also has what are they called? I think I have it. Examples. It's this. No, not so. Um, where did I put that link? Mm. Okay, I'll update the document with the link that has the examples. They have like some nice exercises that you can learn JavaScript with. So this is extra work. It's not really part of my outline, but it's a good site where you can learn JavaScript as a programming language on its own. So tomorrow, next week, we'll be starting with React. So that's a whole other headache. So when you get time, even in the future, even after the program, you can continue with this site. Just go slowly, step by step, because it's really in-depth and it has a lot of information. If you click each link, you'll notice that it's really, really in-depth, right? So take your time, go through it, like spend at least 2 months on this site or any other site related to it, that way you can learn JavaScript as a programming language. Yeah, so with that, I hope I'd like to stop the class there, and we can meet next week. So what I'll be sharing is the guide and the exercise that we need to do between today. This is Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Then on Monday, I'll share the final JavaScript form, like the HTML form. Okay, I think Faith, Ashley, maybe you can drop off, then I can continue talking to Nigel.